string of victories for President Biden on that sweeping domestic and economic agenda we've been covering, including those bipartisan breakthroughs, which are so unusual. Many are actually having a hard time getting their heads around Mitch McConnell backing Biden on the Senate floor, which happened, at least on some issues, this week. This also reflects a possible split between some Republicans in government who may be waking up to Biden's popularity with independents and a portion of Republican voters, at least on some of these domestic agenda items. A break between those Republicans and the rest of the MAGA base who continue to not only oppose Biden at all costs, but to push the Republican Party deeper into a Trumpian agenda that opposes democracy and civic life itself. When a major political party continually lies about or defends a violent attack on the government, which is a feature of our life this year, there are real-world impacts. And that brings us to the top story tonight, because we're seeing news that is sad, that is disturbing, and that you need to know about. A new government bulletin warning of racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists who are pushed by, quote, conspiracy theories on perceived election fraud, as well as alleged reinstatement of Donald Trump. Well, that is from the U.S. Homeland Security Department. It's nonpartisan, and that term there, perceived election fraud, is their sort of clinical, fairest way they can say it, reference to Donald Trump's repeated dangerous lies, which were weaponized for mob violence, with that mob of Trump supporters summoned by Donald Trump who used actual weapons, kind of a very literal weaponization. Now, this is not going away by itself, even if people would rather think about other things. And DHS, by the way, they don't love putting out politically related bulletins. They do it when it hits the bar of U.S. national and homeland security being pushed by politics, in this case, prominent Republicans. Not all, but some prominent ones. We also are seeing new reports on the ground that show the kind of things that are being mainland today, like an allegedly criminal leak of passwords to secure voting machines that were handed over to a right-wing, MAGA-sympathetic website.
Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State Jena Griswold believes Republican Mesa County Clerk and Recorder Tina Peters is partially responsible for voting system passwords ending up online as part of a conspiracy theory to prove election fraud in Colorado.
The voting equipment currently in Mesa County can no longer be used.
Griswold said video surveillance watching the machines had been turned off 1 week prior and stayed off until recently, and that the county let a mystery man attend the upgrade while passing him off as an employee.
This is really happening. Now, anytime this happens at the local level, it's not automatically national news. Tonight, we're looking at it in the context of the DHS warning about political violence. Now, the plot there, it looks like it was busted from what we can tell in public accounts. The reports suggest any attempted fraud there is coming from the MAGA side, who are the same people projecting and lying about other people allegedly committing voter fraud. Now, that will be under criminal investigation. We'll update you with anything we learn about what really went down. It is bad news for the Republican clerk involved because, while she has every right to defend herself, we're going to find out whether the investigation leads to her. And we should note she was just a featured speaker at a Big Lie Summit sponsored by the My Pillow guy. Because, of course. Now, these conspiracy theories are not just something in the ether on the side, something embarrassing that you have to discuss at some family reunion from time to time. I want to tell you tonight, because we try to bring you the big stories, that this has now become central to the MAGA movement. It's becoming a new litmus test that morphs and lies and absurdity into some kind of thing that Republican officials will have to answer to or prove themselves. And I'm about to show you an example of this. It's a thing where rabid, maybe confused political randos anoint themselves the judge and jury for actual Republican elected officials who may know something about elections because they've at least participated in them. Here is a Republican congressman dealing with a heckler discussing the 2020 election.
Don't kid yourself into believing that's why we lost. It's not. It's not.
You're wrong.
I'll tell you openly.
You're wrong.
I'll tell you, and I'm not wrong.
Yes, you are. I have
states?
plenty of proof. I have proof in Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia.
You went 5 different states?
Yes.
Hundreds of thousands of votes?
Yes.
You're kidding yourself.
Spoiler alert, that guy does not have proof. But here's the wider context tonight. as we end a week where there were breakthroughs in Washington, but there is an actual warning from DHS about political violence. The Republican Party and its candidates got fewer votes in the last 7 of 8 presidential elections. The U.S. Census has now released its new nonpartisan data, and it's making this headline, which was on the front page of today's New York Times, which fits into this context. America growing more diverse during this past decade, and it documents a shift that many know about anecdotally. The overall population in America has slowed in terms of growth, but, quote, the number of multiracial Americans more than doubled. And the report finds the white population declined for the first time in over 200 years. Now take how this plays out on the ground, like a state that's considered red, Texas. But Republicans are trying to suppress the vote. Why would they be doing that in such an overwhelmingly red state? We've heard how red it is. Well, people of color make up 95% of the population growth as that white share of the population falls. Now, with those trends combined with the current platforms of these two political parties, it would seem that the Republican Party faces a binary choice between evolving, at least a bit, to appeal to a changing electorate, which is what democracy usually entails, or losing many future elections. That's a binary. But it turns out, and many experts and analysts have been warning about this, that we're seeing a mainlining of the Republican Party trying to find, well, not this way or that way, but a third way. Lying about its losses, suppressing democracy itself so it can win rigged elections. And maybe that's why so many of its leaders talk about fraud and rigging so much. Maybe they think everyone else is just like them.